everybody, welcome. Welcome to the technical track of UK 2024. I'm Maciej Sławik, I'm the head of development at JH, and I will be your track host. This year, I would like to thank all our sponsors, speakers, and you, the participants as well, for making this event possible, because without you, we would not be here. We'll have technical tracks here, technical talks, soft talks, and panel discussions as well. During the breaks, I would like to invite you to the sponsor marketplace, where our lovely sponsors have prepared many different things for you. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker of the day, Kuba Zwolinski, web standards and accessibility enthusiast, spreading awareness about accessibility and how it can positively impact every business. Former developer working with Magento since 2008, several times Magento master, maker and organizer of Meet Magento Poland, and a former board member of the Magento Association. Please welcome Kuba Zwolinski.
Good morning, everyone. I really do appreciate that you are here. The break was really short, so it's even more important to me that you are here and that you want to listen and maybe talk about accessibility. So we have only short time for this talk. But if you have any questions, I'm staying here for the whole day. So I really invite you to come and let's talk about it later. So thank you for the introduction. I work with different web technologies for years already, and since the very beginning, I was always a big enthusiast of web accessibility. That's how I started my web career 20 years ago. I really like the idea of having a very inclusive web, that is a place that everyone can access, and it opens door to different activities to people who were isolated from that before. And at that time, I was just optimistic, and I thought that I can build accessible web just like that. Of course, it was very difficult at that time, and accessibility was really reserved only for some government sites, some government services that were forced to be accessible. And right now, the situation is slightly different, and we can talk about accessibility from a completely different point of view. So first of all, why accessibility? And I changed my answer to this question over years. When I started working with web and with accessibility, the answer for me was very simple. We need to make it accessible because it's important for all. We are making our life and life of others better. The world will be better with accessible web. It is somehow correct answer, but the problem is that when we are talking about web and especially about e-commerce, we are talking about business. It's not done for fun, it's done for business. So every e-commerce should bring money. And just making something good for the world is not enough to make it a viable solution for a business. So actually, we really do talk about accessibility. And I can really see so many of you here just because it's a law. It's a law in some of the countries. It's already something on the market for a few years. Like in US, we have American with Disabilities Act for about 5 years that actually bring some serious financial fines for not being accessible, and we are talking about commercial sites. We have a dedicated law here in UK, and we will have a law coming in European Union. So right now, if we like it or not, there has to be a place in the budget for building accessibility. And the big question when we are talking about accessibility over years was that it's expensive. That why I should pay more for accessibility. And today, we will try to look at that from a different perspective. Why we should think about it as just another process, not something extra. So, law, this is number one. we have to think about it because there are some regulations and there are smaller or bigger but fines. Yeah, like if our e-commerce is not accessible, we are risking some financial consequences. But of course, the first answer that I was talking about, it's still something important that we should think about. That people with different disabilities are a huge group of our customers, and if we are not building the solution that will attract this group, we are just losing money. So of course, it's a law. That's number one for many, if we like it or not. But this is also a very important group of our customers. Because when we think about how internet changed our life, in terms of people with different disabilities, it actually made even bigger change. For some people who were just, their disabilities didn't allow them to leave their home or take any normal job. Access to the internet, it opened door to normal life. So if we think about it, those people who were treated before as I would say, just a person who is financed by the society. Right now, those people can earn money and be a buyer, can be just a regular customer. They can live normal life. So this is why accessibility is even more important. But outside of the legal part, outside of the number of potential customers that we can deliver our services or products to, it's really important to think about accessibility as a way to make also all the solutions more usable. All of us sometimes are disabled. Like a very simple thing, when we just try to use any mobile site on any site on mobile in a bright sun, it's really hard to use it if it's built the right way with the proper contrast, with the proper font size, or with the proper distances between different elements. So when we think about that, we can see that accessibility in e-commerce can actually be a huge benefit for every user. And the last one, and actually year after year, it's becoming my favorite, unfortunately, that we are aging. And people who are building internet as a young people who are just thinking how to conquer the world are right now 10, 20, 30, or even more years older. And when we are getting older, if we like it or not, we are getting less fit, and it's about our about different aspects of our life. So this is a very interesting statistic, and that's from the Polish market, but it's more or less similar across the Europe. This is just the newest report I could find. It shows how the percentage of people the older age is increasing in the number of total buyers online. So it's just that our society is aging. So if we want to keep delivering our service, we have to think about this aging customers group. So those few aspects are super important when we are talking to some decision makers why accessibility needs any attention, why it needs any funding or any time in our budgets or plans. And here is the most important element. Does it have to be expensive? For years, accessibility meant mostly super expensive audit and rebuilding everything from scratch. So it was really expensive. The audit itself was expensive, and the whole operation, of course, of building many solutions from scratch and destroying some of the previous solutions that were built for years, it was really a nightmare for everyone, for every product owner who was supposed to make their product accessible. And there is one solution for that. And solution for that is building an accessibility culture in every organization. And the accessibility culture should be built in the solution provider organization, but also should be built inside every e-commerce, every business organization. Because the simple things like understanding, they help build become accessibility the part of everything what we do. And why it's so important? Because accessibility is not only about guidelines and about front-end coding. Accessibility is about many aspects of our online and offline business. So the first step to building the proper accessibility culture is understanding why everyone in the organization should understand the principles of accessibility. There are different parts of every project, and if we skip one of them, accessibility is getting much more difficult. Because let's look at this circle. That we start with some content, we do some analysis what to do with this content. We build the proper user experience, the user journey, just to go through all of those informations. Then we design a beautiful user interface, so it all looks pretty. And we build it. Then we have to maintain it somehow. We have to always analyze and verify the quality. And then we go back to create more content and build new features, etc. And we can, if simply we just look at that and we see that any of those elements will not have a basic knowledge about accessibility, it makes life and work much harder for all others. Because if we don't start with the proper accessibility approach to the content, with the content creation and idea how to maintain it later, how to add more content in an accessible way, it's much harder for people to plan its position in the whole structure. And if we don't think about accessibility aspects when designing customer journey, it breaks everything and it makes it impossible later to code. If we don't think about accessibility when designing, even the best coder who is super skilled in accessibility practices will not build a really accessible solution. So everything here is important. And then we are going to development. And if we have a beautiful design and great user journey and amazing content, but we have developers who don't care about accessibility guidelines, then again, we had a great plan, but there's no implementation. And the same in maintenance. Accessibility is not a one-off activity. It's a process. So we start it and then we keep going. Because every e-commerce is like a living organism. So it needs constant changes. And all those changes has to be done with accessibility in mind. If we forget about accessibility for 1 week, 2 weeks of updating new products or new content, we are losing accessibility of the website. So starting with understanding, including everyone in the organization to understand basics, why accessibility is important, and then keeping this process. And of course, the beginning of that may be difficult because we need to bring attention of different people to accessibility and to understand why it's important. And just to be realistic, for many people, especially I can focus on developers because I used to be a developer, and it's definitely less sexy to think about accessibility guidelines than about the new framework we can use. So if we are going to spend some time, usually we spend time on new technologies, not how to make something more accessible. So it is hard at the very beginning, but this is the key to make accessibility really common. Because if it will generate extra costs, it will never be a common task. So to make everything accessible, we need to make sure that building, designing, creating with accessibility is just a normal thing. Like when we are thinking about coding, we think about coding standards. If we are using tabs or spaces or how we place different parts of the code, this is exactly the same, that we use some common techniques from the guidelines. And that should go through regular Q&A, and if it's not really fulfilling those requirements, it's not following the guidelines, it goes back. It goes back as a regular bug, not something extra. And this is the only way to just avoid expensive audits. Because right now, audit is a #1 tool to see if we are accessible. But audit means that actually there was something really wrong before, that we forgot about everything that is simple. Accessibility for websites, for e-commerce, is simple. This is really not a rocket science. Most of the software right now is more or less ready for accessibility. And what we need to do is not to break it, just to follow the guidelines, to keep building it, following the good practices. Then we can forget about audits. Because audits in every field, they are a problem. Like we order an audit, we pay a lot of money for that, and then usually, if someone made an audit, they try to show that they deserve the money, so they make the audit as big as possible. And then we get this huge book of different recommendations, and nobody has. It's a big problem with audits. So if we have to do the audit, it's usually because we have a problem or there is some other immediate action that needs to be taken. But it's really not the best idea. So the most important is to start early with education. Just spend a couple hours every month, or maybe invest in some online courses for everyone in the company. That's really important. That slide I showed you before, that accessibility is not only about developers. And it's like, if we're talking about developers, it's not only about front-end developers. Even if back-end developers don't touch this customer-facing part, they should understand why accessibility is important and what are principles of accessibility. We have guidelines. The guidelines are pretty straightforward. They are not really telling us exactly what to do, but they are telling us what we want to achieve. And there may be different ways, and we may be creative. But knowing WCAG is something that, at least summary, should be known to everyone. And one of the most important groups are also decision makers. Because if we want to dedicate some time for accessibility, even for the training, we need to show the business case why we should do it. We should do that. Even if it's not that expensive, it should be placed somewhere in budget. And when we are talking about actual work and avoiding those expensive audits later, there are more and more tools that can be helpful during the development process. And this is just few of them that can be used. But starting from the designing, we have already tons of plugins to Figma that can help us design the right stuff, following the good accessibility practice. When it comes to coding, we have more and more plugins using different machine learning solutions to analyze our code and just help us fix those simple issues at the very beginning, so we don't have to fix them when it's already on production and actually not accessible. Many of them, they are of course paid as a service, but there are also a bunch of tools that are free, that we can use as an open source. We can modify them, we can contribute. And that's also like based on Axe DevTools. They released a pretty cool open source library, and that was the start of the idea that we did at Snowdog. We built an accessibility tool for developers and agencies that can help analyzing our websites during the development process. So it's really easy. Like in this tool, we can combine both automated and manual tests to make accessibility a smooth process. That during the development, we just don't have to waste extra time, and every tester or QA specialist can become an accessibility specialist. So from the very beginning of my adventure with Magento, I believed in open source. I believed in so-called competition, so collaboration and competition. I think that this is a great example that to make internet accessible and to make it a reasonable tool in e-commerce, something that is not expensive, that's just a part of normal process, that collaboration is needed. And that's why also we released a huge part of that tool that you can actually use, you can play with it, you can contribute as an open source. So it's not like an out-of-the-box solution, but it's something that you can use, you can launch that application, and you can also modify it to your own needs. So I also encourage you to first talk about accessibility in your organization. This is number one. People have to understand that it exists, and it's not only law, it's not only the legal part, but this is just something that makes it better for your users, for your customers. So discuss it internally in your organizations, spend some time to make it part of your everyday process of designing, coding, decision-making. And if you have time, think about accessibility as something that is really worth contributing. Because that's something that always will have some lower priority in business. So if we can contribute, if we can share and actually take the accessibility to the higher level together, that's only better. And I think that's it for today. So if you have any questions about that, like, the 20 minutes is just to really touch the tip of the iceberg. I didn't really dive deeper into any details of accessibility, principles, whatever. But I assume that you know it, or it's so easy to find it in million sources that really my point was to tell you one thing. Talk about accessibility in your organizations. It will make the whole accessibility building process much easier and cheaper. Thank you very much.